She fired me for loyalty, then watched her empire collapse.
Betrayal. Pure, simple betrayal. Brianna's voice, sharp as shattered glass, echoed through the break room. She held my resignation letter aloft, a damning exhibit in a silent courtroom. My coffee mug felt heavy in my hand, a lead weight mirroring the sinking feeling in my gut. 12 years. 12 years of loyalty. 12 years I'd poured into this company, vanishing into thin air with the scent of cheap instant coffee. "How could you do this to me, Karen?" Her voice cracked, the perfect blonde facade crumbling, a carefully constructed image dissolving into a tear-streaked mess. The perfectly styled hair, usually a beacon of professional composure, was slightly disheveled, a visual representation of her inner turmoil. The room held its breath, every eye fixed on us, a silent audience awaiting the climax of this unexpected drama. My expression remained neutral, a mask of calm against the storm brewing within. "Actually, Brianna," I said, my voice low and steady, cutting through the suffocating silence, "that's not a resignation letter. That's a job application. To Gravora Group. Care to explain how you got access to my personal documents?" Her eyes narrowed, dangerous and cold. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've been going behind my back, plotting to leave us. After 12 years of loyalty, this is how you repay Northrise Apparel?" The irony was a bitter pill, a punch to the gut. 12 years. 12 years of staying late, covering her mistakes, managing clients she couldn't handle, watching less qualified employees leapfrog me in promotions. 12 years of hearing, "Maybe next year," every time I asked for a deserved raise. "I've been exploring my options," I replied, keeping my tone professional, my blood pressure simmering beneath the surface. "It's a competitive job market, and I believe in staying informed about opportunities." "Opportunities?" Her voice was a fragile whisper, betraying the carefully constructed facade. "You have everything you need right here. I've protected you, Karen. I've shielded you from the executive pressure upstairs, and this is how you thank me?" The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable. My coworkers pretended to be engrossed in their coffee and snacks, but I could feel their eyes burning into my back. Jennifer from accounting looked particularly pale, likely remembering all the times Brianna had complained about having to manage difficult employees like me. "I think we should continue this conversation in your office," I suggested, wanting to avoid a public spectacle. But Brianna was past caring about professionalism. "No. Everyone should hear this. Everyone should know what kind of person you really are. Disloyal, ungrateful, scheming." A chill settled in my chest. This wasn't just about a job search. It was about control. About Brianna's desperate need to maintain her authority over me. And in that moment, witnessing her public meltdown, a horrifying truth dawned on me. She was terrified of losing me because she knew she couldn't do my job. The realization hit me like a freight train. My name is Karen Whitley, and I'm 45 years old. For the past 12 years, I'd been a senior logistics coordinator at Northrise Apparel, a mid-sized clothing distribution company in Charlotte, North Carolina. When I started, I was 33, recently divorced, desperate for stability. Brianna Lowe had been my manager the entire time. She was ambitious, sharp, with a business degree from Duke, and big dreams of climbing the corporate ladder. In the early days, we worked well together. She appreciated my attention to detail, my ability to handle difficult vendor relationships. I thought we were building something as a team. The first few years were good. I learned the industry, built relationships with key suppliers and transportation partners, developed systems that streamlined operations significantly. Brianna, naturally, took credit for most of it during performance reviews. Office politics, I told myself. But around year 5, things shifted. Brianna became more territorial, more controlling. She micromanaged my client communications, insisted on being copied on every email. When I suggested process improvements, she'd implement watered-down versions weeks later, presenting them as her own ideas to upper management. My first request for a raise came in my 6th year. I'd just successfully negotiated a new contract with our largest supplier, saving the company nearly $200,000 annually. I prepared a presentation, outlining my contributions, and made my case. Brianna listened, nodded thoughtfully, promised to take it up the chain. 2 weeks later, she called me in with an apologetic expression. "I fought for you, Karen, I really did, but with the current budget constraints." Maybe next review cycle. Disappointed, but not surprised. The economy was shaky. I decided to wait, prove my value even more decisively. The second request came a year later, after I'd successfully managed a warehouse flood crisis, preventing millions in losses. Again, Brianna promised to advocate for me. Again, budget constraints. 6 months later, I learned that Derek in purchasing had received a $15,000 bump, and Stephanie in customer service was promoted, both with less experience than me. My third raise request, in year 9, brought an elaborate response. Brianna valued my contributions, but the executive team was concerned about equity across departments. 6 months later, I learned that Derek and Stephanie had received significant salary increases. My fourth and final request, 8 months ago, was met with Brianna's swift, final response. My current compensation was appropriate for my role. Pushing for unjustified increases wasn't helping my professional development. Focus on expanding my skill set instead of monetary compensation. That night, I updated my resume for the first time in over a decade. I wasn't angry. I was determined. If Brianna thought my skills weren't worth investing in, it was time to find someone who disagreed. 3 months later, Gravora Group reached out via LinkedIn. They were looking for an experienced logistics director to head their East Coast operations, and my background at Northrise Apparel had caught their attention. The salary range was nearly double what I was making. I should have been excited, but instead, I felt a strange mix of validation and sadness. This confirmed I'd wasted years accepting Brianna's excuses about my worth. The interview process with Gravora Group was unlike anything at Northrise. They asked detailed questions, wanted to understand my crisis response protocols, seemed genuinely interested in my ideas for operational improvements. Patricia Wells, the hiring manager, had done her homework. She referenced specific contracts I'd negotiated, mentioned savings initiatives I'd implemented years ago. Your reputation in the industry is impressive, Patricia told me during our second interview. Several of our suppliers have mentioned you specifically as someone they enjoy working with. That kind of relationship building is exactly what we need. I tried not to think about how Brianna had never acknowledged those relationships. 2 weeks later, the offer arrived. Senior Director of Logistics Operations, $95,000 annually, full benefits, a clear path to the executive team. I stared at the email for 10 minutes, processing that someone was finally offering me what I knew I was worth. But I wasn't ready to accept immediately. 12 years was a long time. Despite everything, I felt I owed Brianna and Northrise one final chance to match the offer. It was naive, but I scheduled a meeting to discuss my career trajectory. I've been thinking about my future here, I began cautiously. I wanted to discuss potential opportunities for advancement. Brianna barely looked up from her computer. Karen, we've talked about this. Your role is important to the team, and you're compensated fairly for your level of responsibility. Actually, I said quietly, I've received an external offer that suggests otherwise. That got her attention. Her fingers stopped typing. What kind of offer? A senior director position with a competitor. The compensation is significantly higher than what I'm currently earning here. For a moment, panic flickered across her face. Then her expression hardened. And you think this is appropriate? Using outside offers to manipulate your current employer? I'm not trying to manipulate anyone, I said. I'm giving you the opportunity to retain someone who has contributed significantly to this company's success. Contributed, she scoffed. Karen, you do your job, nothing more. You follow the processes I've established and maintain relationships I've helped you build. If you think you're irreplaceable, you're deluding yourself. The words hit me like physical blows. 12 years of late nights, crisis management, going above and beyond, and this was how she saw my contributions? Something inside me shifted. A final acceptance that this relationship was beyond repair. I see, I said quietly. I appreciate your perspective. She leaned forward. Look, I don't want to lose you over some recruiter's empty promises. These outside companies make big offers to steal talent, then cut people during the first restructuring. You're safe here, Karen. You have job security. Job security at a salary that was apparently 60% below market rate, with a manager who saw me as easily replaceable. The irony was almost funny. I'll need to think about it, I told her. That evening, I called Patricia Wells and accepted Gravora Group's offer. What I discovered during my 2-week notice period changed everything I thought I knew about the logistics industry. Patricia introduced me to their existing client portfolio. I was shocked to see how many companies were actively looking to switch from their current providers due to service issues. 3 names on their prospect list made my heart race: Coastal Manufacturing, Pinnacle Textiles, and Morrison Fabrics. All 3 were massive accounts Northrise Apparel had held for over a decade. All 3 were apparently frustrated with their current service levels and looking for alternatives. These companies have expressed interest in switching, Patricia explained during my first week, but they've been hesitant because their current provider has established relationships and knows their specific requirements. We need someone who understands their operations intimately. I knew these companies' operations better than anyone except possibly their own internal teams. I'd spent years learning their seasonal patterns, rush delivery requirements, preferred shipping windows. I'd personally negotiated their contracts, resolved their crises, built relationships with their key personnel. How long have they been considering a switch? I asked carefully. Morrison Fabrics has been vocal about their dissatisfaction for 6 months. They've had several delivery delays and communication issues. Coastal Manufacturing is frustrated with a lack of flexibility in their shipping options. Pinnacle Textiles has been asking about our sustainability initiatives because their current provider isn't meeting their environmental standards. Every issue she mentioned was something I'd tried to address at Northrise, only to be told by Brianna that the current processes worked fine and that change was unnecessary disruption. But the most shocking revelation came when Patricia handed me a folder marked Competitive Analysis. We've been tracking your former employer's performance metrics, she said. Their client retention has been declining, and we're hearing reports of internal management issues. I opened the folder to find detailed analyses of Northrise Apparel's operations. Delivery performance had declined 23% over the past 2 years. Customer satisfaction scores were down across all major accounts. Most telling of all, 3 significant accounts had already terminated their contracts in the past 6 months. How did you gather this information? I asked. Patricia smiled. Industry connections. Vendors talk to each other. Suppliers share experiences. Your former company's reputation has been sliding for quite some time. I thought about all the vendor complaints I'd quietly managed, all the client frustrations I'd smoothed over, all the fires I'd put out before Brianna even knew they existed. Without me there to maintain those relationships and solve those problems, everything was apparently falling apart. That evening, I called Robert Uled at Morrison Fabrics. We'd worked together for 8 years, and he'd always been straightforward with me about his concerns. Karen, I heard you moved to Gravora Group. Congratulations on the promotion. Thank you, Robert. I'm settling in well. I understand you've been having some challenges with your current logistics provider. That's putting it mildly. Since you left, nothing works the same way. Delivery schedules are inconsistent. Communication is terrible. And frankly, I don't trust their new account manager to handle our requirements properly, some junior person who doesn't understand our business. They keep trying to change our established protocols, and when we push back, they say they need to check with their supervisor. It's frustrating. My heart sank. Brianna had assigned one of the junior coordinators to handle Morrison Fabrics, one of our most complex and demanding clients. A recipe for disaster. Robert, what would it take to consider switching providers? The question hung in the air a moment before he laughed. Are you making me an offer, Karen? The call with Robert opened floodgates I hadn't expected. Within 48 hours of our conversation, he'd scheduled a formal meeting with Gravora Group to discuss transitioning Morrison Fabrics logistics operations. The contract was worth $1.2 million annually, but that was just the beginning. Jennifer Hayes from Coastal Manufacturing called me directly 2 days later. Karen, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Robert Ewald mentioned you had moved to Gravora Group, and frankly, we were desperate for help. I listened as she detailed 6 months of frustrations with Northrise Apparel, missed delivery windows, inflexible scheduling, and what she described as arrogant responses when they raised concerns about service quality. The final straw was last week. We had an urgent shipment that needed to go out for a product launch, and instead of working with us to find a solution, their account manager told us our expectations were unrealistic and that we needed to plan better. Karen, you know our business. You know we don't make unrealistic demands. She was right. Coastal Manufacturing was actually one of our easiest clients. They planned well in advance, communicated clearly, and rarely asked for special accommodations. If they were having problems, it was definitely a service failure on Northrise Apparel's end. What would a transition look like from your perspective? I asked. Honestly, we've been ready to switch for months. We just needed to find a provider who understands our operations. With you at Gravora Group, that concern disappears. The third call came from Margaret Torres at Pinnacle Textiles, and her message was even more direct. Karen, we're terminating our contract with Northrise Apparel effective next month. Their environmental reporting is inconsistent. Their sustainability initiatives are practically non-existent. And frankly, we don't trust their account management anymore. Are you interested in taking over our logistics operations? I sat in my new office at Gravora Group, staring at my phone in disbelief. 3 of Northrise Apparel's largest clients were actively seeking to terminate their relationships and move to my new company. Combined, these contracts represented over $3.5 million in annual revenue. Patricia Wells was ecstatic when I presented the opportunities. Karen, this is incredible. These transitions could establish us as a major player in the regional market, but I felt a strange mix of triumph and guilt. These clients weren't following me because I'd poached them. They were fleeing Northrise because the service quality had deteriorated so dramatically in my absence. In just 1 month, everything I'd built and maintained over 12 years was crumbling. The guilt faded quickly when I remembered Brianna's words. You follow the processes I've established and maintain relationships I've helped you build. She'd truly believed my contributions were minimal, that anyone could do what I did. The irony was devastating. Patricia and I spent the rest of the week developing transition plans for all 3 accounts. Gravora Group's operations team was energized by the prospect of such significant growth, and I found myself more excited about work than I had been in years. But the real satisfaction came when I thought about Monday morning at Northrise Apparel. 3 major clients would be submitting termination notices, each one specifically requesting that their operations be transferred to Gravora Group. The letters would land on Brianna's desk like bombs, and she would finally understand exactly what I'd been worth to her company. The woman who had dismissed my contributions as easily replaceable was about to learn the hard way that some relationships can't be rebuilt once they're broken. Monday morning at 9:15 a.m., 3 certified letters arrived at Northrise Apparel's corporate office. I knew this because Patricia Wells had coordinated the timing precisely. Morrison Fabrics, Coastal Manufacturing, and Pinnacle Textiles had all sent formal termination notices, citing service failures and announcing their transition to Gravora Group effective immediately. The calls started coming to my new office before 10 a.m. Karen, we need to talk. Brianna's voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. Hello, Brianna. How can I help you? Don't play games with me. You poached our clients. This is corporate sabotage, and there will be legal consequences. I almost laughed. Brianna, I didn't poach anyone. These companies contacted Gravora Group independently because they were dissatisfied with their current service provider. Perhaps you should examine why 3 major clients decided to terminate their relationships within a month of my departure. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more desperate. These clients, they've been with us for years. We can fix whatever problems they're having. Can you talk to them? Convince them to give us another chance? The request was so audacious that I actually did laugh. You want me to convince clients to stay with the company that fired me for disloyalty? The company where my contributions were apparently minimal and easily replaceable? Karen, please. I made mistakes. We can work something out. I'm afraid that's not possible. My loyalty is with Gravora Group now. I hung up, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't expected. The woman who had dismissed me so casually was now begging for my help to save the very relationships she'd claimed credit for building. By Wednesday, the full scope of the crisis at Northrise Apparel became clear. Patricia Wells had industry contacts who kept us informed about the chaos unfolding across town. The 3 client departures had triggered a massive revenue shortfall that sent shockwaves through the company's executive team. Combined, the lost contracts represented 32% of Northrise's annual logistics revenue. The immediate financial impact was devastating, but the long-term implications were even worse. Other clients were now questioning their relationships with Northrise. Word had spread quickly through the industry that their largest accounts were jumping ship, and smaller clients were suddenly paying closer attention to service issues they'd previously overlooked. The executive team had called an emergency board meeting for Thursday. According to our sources, heads were going to roll. But the sweetest revenge came in the form of a phone call I received Wednesday afternoon. "Miss Whitley, this is David Patterson from Northrise Apparel's executive team. I believe we may have made some errors in how we handled your departure." I recognized the name. He was the vice president of operations, Brianna's boss. "I'm listening, Mr. Patterson. We'd like to offer you your position back with a significant salary increase and a promotion to director level. We recognize that we undervalued your contributions to the company." The offer was almost insulting in its desperation. Director level, the position I should have been promoted to 2 years ago, and a salary that was probably still below what Gravora Group was paying me. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Patterson, but I'm very happy in my current role. Miss Whitley, please reconsider. We're prepared to be very flexible on compensation and responsibilities." I'm afraid my answer is final. When I hung up, I realized that this moment, being courted by the company that had dismissed my worth, represented the complete vindication of everything I'd endured. The woman who had blocked my advancement for years was about to face the consequences of her poor judgment, and I wouldn't be there to save her. As I reflected on the revenge that had unfolded so naturally, I understood that sometimes the best payback comes not from elaborate schemes, but from simply allowing people to experience the full consequences of their actions when you're no longer there to shield them from the fallout.